Right, ladies and gentlemen, we're at 10 o'clock. Are we streaming, Julie?
Yes, we are.
Right. Welcome to you all. Jacob, sorry. Welcome to you all, and welcome to those watching us online, in the masses, I guess. We're not expecting any fire alarms today, but if we do, usual practice, follow the officers out to the car park. Thank you very much. So I go to item 1, the minutes, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of January on pages 3 to 7 of your agenda pack. Do we have any amendments, questions on those minutes? If not, can you raise your hands if you're in favour, please, of them, those that were there? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. I have signed the minutes. Julie? Apologies. We've had apologies from Councillor Duffield, who is not well, and thank you, Mark Kiddle-Morris, for stepping into his place. Thank you very much. We haven't got any others, have we, Julie? No. Item 3, declarations of interest. If any members have any interest in any of the items, please declare them now. Or if further in the meeting you think, oh, I should have declared that, please do so at the time. Thank you. Urgent business, I'm not aware of any. Item 5, non-members wishing to address the meeting. Welcome. Item 6, member training, which is a standing item on our agenda. So I'm going to go to Sarah first, if I may.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any updates for you on member training, but
Okay.
happy to take any questions.
Right. Any questions from the floor? Jacob.
Yeah, can I just ask, was there going to be a sort of questionnaire to elected members at the early part of this year? I've heard mentioned before.
Yes, we are planning to send one out. What we thought we would do is just give members a little bit of time to sort of settle in, and then we will send one out. But yes, we are planning to do that, so I'll pick that up with Teresa Smith.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A quick question. I noticed the Members' Code of Conduct has been updated to the LGA model, which was mooted some time ago. I'm just wondering whether members should actually re-sign the declaration that they would actually have to adhere to that Code of Conduct, because the one they signed relates to the previous Code of Conduct. And should that also extend to parish councils, who I was at parish council the other night that adopted the new Code of Conduct, and should they be reminded that they should actually re-sign a declaration to adhere to that particular Code of Conduct?
I think on that point I'm going to defer to our legal services manager. She may have to go away and just check with Democratic Services, but I'll see whether Sarah would like to comment on that.
Thank you. I think you make a very valid point. I mean, we have considered it, and we probably do need to consider it further. And then, can you just leave it with me, and then I'll discuss it with the Democratic Services Manager, and we'll come up with a plan of action as to whether you need to or not. Thank you.
If I can just add to that, so at the parish councils I work with, where they review their policies every year, we re-sign every year. So it's just better safe than sorry, because otherwise someone can challenge if an issue came up, well, actually, I didn't sign up for that one, because things do change slightly, don't they, in a modern world. So thank you, Mark, for bringing that one up. Anything else for Sarah or Nat? Okay, Sarah here would like to say a few words about safeguarding.
Thank you. I would like to suggest that we offer members some safeguarding training, probably around 90 minutes to 2 hours. I propose that we would do it in-house because we've got some skilled staff in-house who can do it. So it would be me and others. And the idea around the safeguarding training would be to develop an awareness of safeguarding issues and give members the confidence to act on concerns about safety and well-being of children and adults. So our course would cover both adults and children in one, and obviously keep it relevant to a district level. It would cover understanding what is meant by safeguarding and responsibilities, recognising the signs, and then what to do if you have a concern. So if you're happy, I'll set the wheels in motion and roll this out as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, Mark?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, I would applaud that sort of training as a member of the Norfolk Safeguarding Adults Board. I would like that to be brought down to members of the District Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Just a rider to that, I think it would be beneficial if we could have it face-to-face, again, if members are happy with the proposal.
And another Sarah. Sarah's.
Thank you. I'm conscious that with respect to safeguarding, Chair of Mid Norfolk MENCAP and several other roles where safeguarding is absolutely fundamentally important. But as elected members, we have very little in the way of mandatory training. So for this kind of thing, given our roles within the community, the fact that we talk to residents on their doorstep very often, is there any mechanism by which we can create a mandatory training package or incorporate something? We know from the induction it was quite patchy in terms of existing local members attending the induction training. Do we have any mechanism by which we can create a mandatory package of training? Because I would see that this might fit in it. I think it's only planning, isn't it, at the moment, which is a mandatory element.
And licensing, they have to do some, yes. But it's a really good point. I'll ask the ladies if they'd like to respond.
I mean, I think, yes, we can. I guess it would have to come through here first to say that is mandatory. And perhaps it might be a good idea to actually remind members what is mandatory and what isn't. But yeah, certainly being the Deputy Safeguarding Lead, I'm all for members having training and have compulsory training for that area. But obviously it's not down to me, I think it's down to the members. But I think, yes, we can certainly look at it and consider how we would change. I don't think we'd necessarily need to change the Code of Conduct, because I think that's probably broad enough that actually it would allow us to do that. I think we just need to look how we develop the planning mandatory training and bring that within the fold.
It may be that what we can do is do 2 levels of training. So as part of the induction, for example, we can do a more focused session to cover the basics of what we feel that all members need to do, but then perhaps provide something a bit more in depth, which is a bit more discretionary, so that members can then choose whether they want to follow that up and sort of delve a bit deeper into that particular issue. So maybe...
Got it. That's all right, but don't worry, you carry on. I'm still working. Carry on.
Thank you. Sorry. So yes, so we could look at having 2 levels of training depending on interest, so that, but at least we would know then that members were familiar with the real core need to know issues around safeguarding, using that as an example. But yes, we would bring it back here.
We'll just borrow that.
Thank you.
Okay. Hang on a minute, we'll be okay in a minute. Right, okay, so all I was going to suggest is when we do the mandatory training, if we decide to do mandatory training, we try, because some members work full time, and try and work it so that perhaps on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock or something, to try and get more people there, because I'm always getting complaints that we're making things difficult if we do it at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday or something. So if we can just bear that in mind, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Sarah.
Thank you. As a working full-time counsellor, I would agree that if we can make more efforts to push to one side of the day or not, that'd be very welcome. Just to sort of join things up a little bit, given the commitment to programmes like the DAISY programme, and given the council's, like structural acknowledgement of the issue around violence towards women and girls, and again, just speaking to our role with speaking with residents on the doorstep, I think if there's any way that just kind of reinforces the need, I think, for this to be mandatory, and if there's any way acknowledging that two-tier approach, but I think if we can overtly address those kind of signs and, excuse me, how to engage with people around that very sensitive topic, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
And it just seems appropriate at this point, because we've just had a discussion before the meeting about bringing back the subject of whether we go for CBS checks for members.
Yes.
Sorry. We've tried many times before, and it's not been usual for councillors to have that clearance, but I think we work in such a different way now that it's certainly Norfolk County Council have been advised to do it. Through my parish council, they've done it for us. So it's something I think Sarah's going to look at, and it sort of ties in now with all this whole safeguarding training, etc. Yeah.
On that, if my understanding is correct, so DBS checks are now personal, not to an organisation. So you have one, I have one, I'm sure you have one, many of us will. So I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity, and because they're good for 3 years, I think, aren't they? So perhaps, in addition to signing a code of conduct again, or when people are sort of initiated into the council, perhaps there's a way then of inviting that check, because then that procedurally is quite a clean opportunity to at least get that initial DBS. I completely agree with having that on. It's quite common for me to have small children following me around when I'm canvassing, and I'm constantly talking to parents, asking for their permission and things like that. So having that additional bit of comfort, I think, would be very welcome. Good, thank you very much.
So is everyone in favour of both of those suggestions now, that we, through Sarah, we look at a safeguarding package, and I think, and CBS check. But also, I think then it should come back through this committee as member development champions, as we are really here, to get that in place. I guess eventually it'll have to go through full council, won't it? Or at least be acknowledged by them. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Is that right with you, Sarah?
Yes, yep.
And Sarah? And Sarah? Okay. Moving on to item 7, HR policy changes. I'm going to ask Councillor Webb to present this and to propose her recommendation. Then I will ask for a seconder, and then we'll go to any questions.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody. Okay, so we regularly review our internal HR policies at Breckland and have some suggested amendments for decision today. There are 4 policies which require your consideration. Minor changes have been made to the Officer Code of Conduct and the Managing Absence Policy to ensure they are in line with current legislation and best practice. The Bullying and Harassment Policy is new. It's been written, having reviewed several examples of best practice policies in local government in the UK to protect our people and promote a safe environment in which everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Lastly, I would like to draw your attention to the Pay Protection Policy, which was reviewed by this committee in September last year. It was recommended that we reduce the period of pay protections from 3 years to 1 year. Some of you might remember this, and that recommendation was approved. However, it was discussed that the proposals would go out to consultation with staff and unison, so we wanted to report back to you with the outcomes which are highlighted in the report. To refresh your memory, pay protection is needed when staff are at risk of redundancy and a suitable alternative is found within the council at 1 grade lower. In this scenario, according to the previous policy guidelines, they would keep their higher salary for 3 years. Organisational Health Board has recommended that this is reduced to a 1-year protected pay in line with other local councils. The purpose of this protection is to give people time to either adjust to the lower salary if they choose to stay within the alternative role, or give them time to seek alternative employment. By having this protected pay for longer, it creates budget pressures as well as staff getting used to their enhanced payment for such a long time and therefore feel that we're taking it away after 3 years. There is also a risk of equal pay issue if salaries are inconsistent across gender for the same or similar role. Currently, we have 2 people on pay protection, one ending on the 30th of April 24 and one ending on the 30th of September 25. Given that the response rate was so low, I think it was 3, is that right? Yeah. We need to point out that the feedback received is not representative of the workforce and therefore may not change the original decision to reduce to 1 year. However, we wanted to give you the opportunity to consider the feedback in light of the decision made in September 2023 and to advise if you wish to reconsider it. To confirm, the cost implications of the recommendations are 0. If councillors would like to reconsider the pay protection statement recommendation, a report will be brought to the next GP with more information. All of these policies have delegated authority to be agreed at GP. Natalie is here to answer any questions. So my recommendations are to agree the following. Number 1, approve the reviewed officer code of conduct. Number 2, approve the new bullying and harassment policy. Number 3, approve the managing absence policy. And 4, to consider the feedback from Unison in relation to changes to the Council's pay protection statement agreed by General Purposes Committee in September 2023. Thank you very much. Open to questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go to questions, do we have a seconder for that proposal? Thanks, Taylor. So we've got 4 recommendations there, and the 4th one needs a good debate. So what I'm going to suggest, if my legal friend agrees, we go through the 3 policies, number 1, 2, 3, to see if there's any questions on those, and then we debate number 4. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And I think in terms of number 4, we may need to tweak the recommendation that is going to be voted on, depending on how the debate proceeds.
That's fine. So let's go back to the first recommendation, to approve the reviewed officer code of conduct. We've all had it. Any comments, questions from the floor? Was everyone happy? Happy? Everyone happy with that? Right. No questions on that one then. Number 2, the new bullying and harassment policy. Mark.
I think it was that particular policy was well written. I did have one question on the second paragraph, employees' rights. Where can what I've written here is, where can the internal grievance procedure be found and how is it accessed? It doesn't say anything in the document as to how you actually get into the system. I just wondered whether that could be tweaked a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, we can absolutely tweak the wording. All policies for your information are available and accessible to staff through the intranet, and they're all in one specific place so that people can view them as and when they want. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Anything else from the committee? No? Okay. With that comment, which I think is fine for us to include in be minuted anyway, thank you. And the 3rd one is to approve the managing absence policy. Mark.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Chairman. I found this overly long and very complicated, and I thought somebody reading this would. I got lost about page 8 or 9, but there are some things in here which I've made little notes about somewhere. The sickness notification and maintaining contact. You end 2 sentences with, and possible disciplinary. Shouldn't there be action after that? I would have thought so because it appears elsewhere as disciplinary action. Definitions of absence. I suppose 1 day is absent, isn't it? If you ring in and say I'm going to be sick, it starts then, but you don't know how long it is, do you? You might be off for 2 days, you might be off for 3 days, but what confused me is if I'm off for 3 days with a bad cold or even a bad hangover or whatever, when does it start coming back into this system in terms of interviews and iTrent and all that sort of thing? Because that's not clear to me. You say short-term absence up to 2 calendar weeks, but what happens if it's only 2 or 3 days? What kicks in for those 2 or 3 days? And I can't see that in the document anywhere.
Thank you very much for your question. So we have a process online on a system called iTrent, which encourages staff and managers to report all absences. Everything goes on there. And then we report all of that back through our organisational health board. What we do as well as an HR team is we work with managers on a monthly basis to hold a business partnering meeting to assess any absence, along with lots of other HR things over the course of the month, so that we can keep a track on it and point out where people have been absent and whether there's any kind of patterns of behaviour. So what we encourage managers to do is, as well as monitoring if it goes over 2 weeks, if there are, for example, patterns, if an individual is having every Monday and every Friday off, for example, and that's happening regularly, then that will also be picked up via this policy.
Yep, Sarah, next to you.
Real Toblerone.
Next time. So I've just got one question. So on page 6, we've got pregnancy-related sickness. There's been quite a lot of work done regarding absence from work relating to miscarriage and stillbirth, not just from the carrying partner, but also the life partner of that person. Is there scope to extend that to pregnancy-related or miscarriage and stillbirth-related? Because to my view, sickness or absence associated with any of those 3 things should not count towards trigger points. And I think the absence of just stating miscarriage and stillbirth would then not necessarily invite that, because it's a very sensitive subject anyway for someone to bring into a work environment. So I think if we can extend even just that heading and the element around pregnancy to cover those overtly, then that would be welcome.
I don't see any reason why not. I think in practice that would absolutely happen in any case, unless you disagree with anything, Sarah. No, I absolutely think that. Yeah, it's just the level of detail that we need in the policy, but I completely agree, and that's what would happen in practice.
Okay, right. With those comments, Mark, sorry, no, keep going.
I've got a couple more. Return to work discussions at the top of page 5 of this policy. It says upon an employee's return to work from an absence, should there not be a period in there when you start return to work discussions over so many weeks or so many months or whatever? It's a bit unclear. If I'm away for 2 days, I could get a return to work something. Voice point. I'll do one more and then you can answer them both. And the phased return, which is halfway down the same page, is after a phased return to work is normally recommended by a medical professional, but after a prolonged period of illness, or is there a period of illness that you'd expect a GP to say, actually, this person is only fit to work part-time? Is that something that should be in there to make people aware that actually that's just the state of play when they get a phased return to work?
Sorry. Apologies, thank you very much. So your first question, return to work discussions happen after every absence. We encourage managers to speak to their staff and check in with them, and that could be a 5-minute telephone call, or it could be a sit down half an hour or an hour discussion depending on the length of absence. So it's relative, I think, to the amount of time that they've had off and whether there are any concerns, but those return to work discussions should be happening after every absence. Second question.
And in fact, while Nat is just responding to, before she responds to the second one, that return to work is a very supportive process. So this is not about checking up on people. This is actually, is there anything we can do as an organisation to help you, in your first few days of returning to work? So is there any kind of measures that we need to put in place? So it's very much a supportive process.
Thank you. In terms of a phased return, it's relatively unknown, is the honest answer. On a GP report, which individuals will get from their doctor, there's a number of boxes, I don't know if you've ever seen them, and those relate to ideas and suggestions about how their employer can support them to return to work. And it could be after a relatively short period of time, or it could be after a relatively long period of time. And if it's a phased return that's needed, that box will be ticked. The other thing that we do for long-term absence and for people who need additional support is we have an occupational health service, and we encourage our managers to offer that where necessary and where relevant, so that we can get some more in-depth medical assistance. And none of us are doctors, so we rely on that. But it depends entirely on the illness as to when and how a phased return would be implemented if it's necessary.
Yeah, go on. No, you carry on.
One of my other questions was going to be, is that occupational health consultation in-house, or is it brought in from outside?
It's an external consultancy, yeah, completely impartial.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions from the committee? So with those comments, team, are you happy for the managing absence policy to go through? Yep. Okay.
Are they voting on 1, 2 and 3?
No, we're going to do 4 now.
Yeah, okay. Only because... number 3, I think, does need tweaking slightly to say it's approved subject to the minor amendments suggested by Councillor Taylor.
Right. So
But we'll deal with that at the end.
Yeah, when we come to do the whole lot on block, we'll make sure that's added in. So now we come to the 4th item, which is to consider the feedback from Unison in relation to the changes to the Council's pay protection statement, which we agreed at this committee in September, and we agreed to 1 year. So the floor is open for debate. I think that's the... Nat, do you want to talk a bit about the process and what happened to help members?
Thank you, Chair. So the report was considered in September, and the recommendation to reduce the pay protection period was reduced to 1 year from 3 years. When we did our research to inform that report and to present to members back in September, we also explained to you that we looked at other councils locally and regionally and nationally, in fact, to consider what was best practice and whether that sort of fit well in terms of what we were doing here at Breckland. And it was, there were no other examples of a 3-year protection period for pay that we came across in that research. So it's quite high. There are some considerations that I know have already been referred to in terms of the gender pay gap and making sure that we're paying people consistently. And I think the caveat to all of this is that it's rare, it's very, very rare that we ever need to implement this policy. At the moment, like I said, there are 2 people. One is ending very shortly, one ending next year. It would only ever occur in a scenario where an individual, perhaps through a redundancy or a restructure situation, is offered a suitable alternative role, but that's a lower grade, lower salary, and then they're protected. So, and that's probably why we've had so little feedback, because it only ever makes a difference to people if they're in that situation, and it's so rare that it doesn't happen. In fact, a lot of councils that we approached in our research didn't have a policy around it because it's quite rare. It was just dealt with on an ad hoc sort of management discretion basis. However, it was important that we brought this back just to explain that we have done a consultation period. That doesn't necessarily change our original recommendation. We wanted you to be informed about the fact that we'd done that consultation, that we'd had a very, very small response, but that we had had a response from Unison as well, and that a very small number of their members had come back and challenged the recommendation. So as we stand, it's been implemented. If you do wish to reconsider it, I just wanted you to be informed about the consultation process and to know that that has happened thoroughly. And I'm more than happy to bring a report back to the next GP if needed.
Thank you very much. Okay, floor.
One statement, please, Madam Chairman. I was obviously not here when it was discussed originally. What I'm concerned about, the two people you've got already on that scheme, I presume they've started on a 3-year one. If we approve this, they won't be truncated. They will carry on for the 3 years.
Apologies. No, no, they will absolutely still remain on their pay protection for the period of time that was agreed.
Anything else from the committee? Okay, so, and Sarah will put me right if I say it wrong. So this item, I'm taking it from the floor that we do not wish to change the decision made in September, that we're content to stay with that decision, which was for 1 year pay protection. Is that right? Right.
Shall I come up with some wording?
Yes, please.
So, Madam Chair, if I could just confirm what the recommendations are with the new wording for number 3 and number 4.
Yep.
Could I ask then it be proposed and seconded again, just to make sure. So obviously the first one's still the same, approve the reviewed officer code of conduct. The second's still the same, approve the new bullying and harassment policy. In respect of recommendation 3, it be slightly amended to say approve the managing absence policy, subject to the minor amendment suggested by Councillor Taylor. I don't think there were any amendments from Councillor Kidd-Morris, was there? I think that was just a discussion. Yeah, so it's just Councillor Taylor. And then number 4, I suggest the following wording, which is following consideration of feedback from Unison, there will be no change to the decision of the General Purposes Committee dated the 25th of September 2023, when it was agreed that the pay protection period be reduced to 1 year.
Thank you very much. Everyone happy with that wording? Side, happy with that wording? So, Alison, could I just get you to propose that en bloc, as Sarah said, because Julie's got it all written down?
Yes, of course, Chairman. As I'd like to propose en bloc all the recommendations, which Sarah's just read out.
And can I have a seconder again? Thank you, Taylor. And all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Sarah. So all those recommendations with amendments have been approved. Item 8, the next meeting, Thursday the 16th of May, here. And thank you all, including